Area Zero, a home to dinosaurs, robots, and even mobs. Pokémon Scarlet and Pokémon Violet are an interesting set of games for the Pokémon series. Being an anthology that takes place in the Paldea region, it follows a set of stories focusing on what we remember from our childhood of playing these games. This includes battling gyms, stopping the evil team, and challenging the Elite Four. But everything changed when I, and many others, went through the fourth story, The Way Home. This portion of the game, despite being short in length, is grand in scale and brings an otherworldly atmosphere. As you and three friends, Arvin, Penny, and Nimona, enter the depths of a gigantic crater, you are introduced to a mysterious land. A land filled with primitive beasts of the forgotten past, chromatic robots of the unforeseeable future, and peculiar crystals containing untold power. It is a world that shows us the past and future, and in the process comes off as something from a fantasy book, but at the same time, an alien planet. Ever since the release of these games, Area Zero has been the center of discussion. But, despite everything that has been found and told, I feel as though many of the mysteries and connections have been left untouched. My goal with this video and more is to look into that. By reading information from both the games and in real life, it is possible that we can get even closer to learning the secrets of Area Zero. And if these connections are true, then I am convinced of one thing. That these games are the ultimate send-up to everything that Pokémon has represented in the past, present, and future. My name is Tak, and I am here to broaden your horizon. Before we begin though, please know that there are many spoilers ahead, so please only continue with this in mind. With all that said and done, let us enter into the great crater of Paldea, the home of Area Zero. In this video in particular, we're going to be focusing on the great crater of Paldea. What is it exactly, and where did it come from? A mountain formation? A sinkhole? Or a gigantic crater made by a meteor from long ago? The Great Crater of Paldea, also known as the Great Pit of Paldea in Japan, is a large ring of mountains that surround the center of the region. To figure out what it is, we need to look into the potential inspirations behind Paldea and the crater itself. Paldea is based on the Iberian Peninsula, which means it takes influence from Portugal, Spain, and a bit of Andorra. But, despite this, based on the placement and shape of the crater, it appears that it's mostly fictitious? Because, in Spain in particular, that location is taken over by what would typically represent cities such as Madrid. This might be why the city of Messagoza, as well as the Naranja and Uva academies, are directly in front of it. But, at the same time, the crater's position is not far off from mountain ranges found in Spain, such as the Sistema Central and Montes de Toledo. As for other influences, the concept of a large and mysterious deep pit is nothing completely new. Aside from the craters found in real life, such as the Chicxulub crater, the idea of giant pits have been seen in other pieces of fiction, such as the 2012 manga series, Made in Abyss. But they're usually completely original settings, so why is there a pit specifically in Paldea, the Pokémon equivalent of the Iberian Peninsula of all places? Well, first, we can bring up that Spain is home to one of the world's oldest known cave paintings, with the oldest piece being a disc in a shade of red. They are found within a cave known as El Castillo, and are believed to be over 40,800 years old. These paintings also show one of the potential reasons why they chose Scarlet, as well as the mascot legendary Koraidon, for the games that seemingly carry a theme of the past. Another thing to consider is that Spain is also known to hold the world's largest crystal cave. Within an abandoned mine found in Pulpi, there is a gigantic geode, a natural crystal phenomena that was measured to be 8 meters in width, 2 meters in height, and 2 meters in depth. With these measurements, it is considered one of the world's largest geodes. This makes me wonder if this was an influence behind both the caves within Area Zero as well as the concept of terrestrialization, a phenomena in PALDEA which has a large emphasis on crystals and ores. Speaking of which, Pulpi is in a southeastern province of Spain known as Almeria. It's fitting because the Almeria province is also home to a gigantic crater. So maybe the Great Crater of PALDEA isn't as fictional as it seems. In order to figure out more though, we need to take a look at the species that live in Area Zero. But I'm not talking about the Paradox Pokémon, but rather the Mauves. Within Area Zero, there is a large assortment of Pokémon that live there. Aside from the dinosaurs and robots, it contains the fully evolved stages of more common families. This includes Raichu, Floatzel, Corviknight, Glimmora, and Farigiraf. Farigiraf is especially fitting because its double head design vaguely resembles an astronaut helmet. So, in a sense, it is just as much of an explorer of this foreign land as you are. Glimmora too is also appropriate, having ties to the chairwoman and top champion of the PALDEA region, Gita, as well as being connected to the terrestrial phenomena due to it dropping Glimmet crystals, the only item required to create TM-171, Terrablast. It indicates that they are more involved with Area Zero's secrets than it seems. But for now, I want to focus on Mauves. Out of everything in Area Zero, the one group that is constantly found there are various types of moth Pokémon. Not butterflies, Mauves. From Venomoth, Frostmoth, to even Volcarona, every moth Pokémon that lives in PALDEA is in Area Zero. But why? Why Mauves out of all the insects, let alone animals? I think one concept to consider is that they are an insect that undergoes metamorphosis. Therefore, as they grow, they drastically change in appearance from larva to pupa to adult. So this transformation could be a metaphor for how life in the current flow of time constantly changes. It could also represent a sense of reincarnation, new beginnings, death, and rebirth, showing us what happens between the past and future, but in a shorter time frame. This metamorphosis is also what influenced Pokémon's version of evolution. This is why so many bug types, such as Caterpie, evolve so early despite having 2 evolutions. It's the game's method of introducing the mechanic with something familiar. But most of them, including the one I provided, are butterflies or beetles, not Mauves. So why Mauves? For that, I had to look into cultural symbolisms and behavior of Mauves in particular. From what I've found, they could represent various things. Aside from death and rebirth, they could also indicate love and devotion. Which makes me think of 2 scientists within Area Zero, Professor Sada and Professor Turo, who were a bit too devoted with creating the paradise of their dreams. And being a species that are mostly active at night or nocturnal, it's a bit ironic that the moth Pokémon that got a paradox equivalent of itself is associated with the sun. But the night also comes off as the end of the day, the time we sleep, darkness, death, and yet these entities fly at night. These specific ideas in particular are likely intentional because white flower phloet and only white flower phloet are found in Area 0. This is likely a reference to the chrysanthemum, a white flower known for symbolizing grief and honesty. Like a hard truth to accept, such as death. This is why they are considered funeral flowers in many cultures. With these elements in mind, it seems that moths represent the lost souls or spirits of those long gone, with the flowers being gifts to those that have parted ways with us. It makes me wonder, though, if these symbols are alluding to the fates of the devoted scientists I've mentioned before? Or do they represent a colony of organisms that may have perished in one fell swoop? After making these connections, there are a few potential answers for what the Great Crater is. But in order for me to explain it, we have to factor in one last potential influence for the Great Crater, the Hollow Earth theory. A mysterious pit, a lost world underneath the surface. The Hollow Earth theory is the belief that beneath the Earth, there is a large interior space. This space is often presented in fiction to contain life that is now long gone. This includes the 1864 novel Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne, the Czechoslovak film Journey to the Beginning of Time from 1955, Ice Age 3 Dawn of the Dinosaurs from 2009, and even the 2017 movie Kong Skull Island. This feels like a major influence given the fact it's called the Great Pit of Paldea in the Japanese release. This, along with the fact that during the story you enter into the lower depths, implying that you are going beneath the surface. I bring this up because Area 0 internally within the game files is called Atlantis. This label is obviously from the lost island of the same name found in Plato's written works. This makes me wonder if it could be compared to Area 0, given its various research labs that were used by scientists who studied the Terra crystals, only for them all, one by one, to leave, leaving only Sada and Turo to continue on their project that became lost to the people, the Time Machine. But that's a bit of a stretch, so maybe it's more so just tied to the idea that Area 0 is a forgotten land. Atlantis. A land that fell into the ocean depths, making it lost to time. Similar to how the dinosaurs died off and fell to the ground, leaving only their bones within the earth. With this in mind, I may have a potential answer as for what the Great Crater is. After sharing all that I have found, there are a few theories I have developed for what Area 0 is. Theory 1, a sunken pit from long ago. A natural formation. This would be fitting given what I said about Area 0's internal files, along with it being called the Great Pit of Paldea in Japan. It's also possible that the crystals beneath the surface of what the crater used to be caused it to sink in on itself, leaving this peculiar pit. The problem with this theory is with the mountain range. I'm not a geologist, but I feel like the crater's size and shape don't support this. Another thing is that we have no idea on if the Terra crystals have the ability to control the Earth like that. It definitely hasn't shown that ability in either Paldea or Kitakami. That's not to say that this theory can be disproven completely. Pokemon has given us unrealistic structures before, and there is a possibility that the Terra Crystals can do more than what we've seen. But otherwise, this is a bust. Theory 2. A land brought to life. Another potential theory that I have is that the Great Crater isn't natural at all, but rather a structure formed by the imagination thanks to the power of the Terra Crystals. While I don't think it's fitting in terms of the time motif of Area Zero, it feels equally as plausible when you think of the imagination motif. In-game, there is some potential evidence that the Terra Crystals can bring thoughts into reality. This theory is mainly shown with the AI professors. In-game, it is revealed that they are made from the Terra Crystals found in Area Zero. Along with this, they are allegedly more advanced than anything else in modern-day PALDEA, with the AI itself saying humanity does not have the knowledge to make AI remotely as sophisticated as them. This makes me wonder if the knowledge and technology needed for them to exist was born out of the desire of the original professors to have a copy of them, as implied within their journals found in Research Station 4. If this assumption is correct, then it's possible that someone dreamt up this peculiar land, making it a permanent staple to PALDEA. So while we don't know who the creator is, we know their creation. This theory is the least likely one, but I thought it was interesting to consider given the game's emphasis on finding something you treasure, whether physical or literal. Speaking of literal, this goes into my last theory. Theory 3. A literal crater made by a meteor. A more likely thought is that the crater was created by a meteor, possibly one that killed off prehistoric Pokémon, or even further back, to a time before life existed. I see this because of panspermia theory, the belief that life was developed from proteins that came from the stars. In this case, though, instead of proteins, it would be Terra Crystals that crashed onto the planet, and potentially chunks of it fell into other locations across the globe given the crystal pool in Kitakami. So maybe the pool fell into PALDEA, causing the pit along with many other phenomena in the region? It's hard to say for now, but the idea of the crater being formatted by a gigantic meteor sounds plausible. But at the same time, it makes me wonder though, why is it called the terrestrial phenomenon? Terra is clearly from the Latin word terra, or the personification of the earth. Wouldn't the name imply that it's from the earth instead of space? This just raises even more questions. For now, those are all the theories that I have at the moment. But before we close the book on this subject, I have one last thing to share. While I feel like the meteor is the most likely candidate, there is a highly likely chance that we will never know the true origins of the crater. And honestly, that's okay. We've seen this predicament all over the world with modern landmarks. We've seen this with the Moai, Stonehenge, and even the pyramids. Sure, we know more about their origins now thanks to research, but that doesn't mean we'll ever know the true answers to everything. It's a reminder that our lives are finite, but the ideas in search for answers are infinite. So even if the dinosaurs, or humans, disappear, the efforts we place live forever. That's everything I have to say for now. So in the meantime, I'm going to go back to the books and see what more there is to discover. With the hope that we meet again, thank you for watching.